Hi, I'm Ollie, and welcome to the sixth entry of this Open Assistant diary to set up Open Assistant to market Open Assistant. So in the past few diary entries, we have set up Steve to have a memory, we have added quite some integrations, we have discussed plugins, and in this sixth entry, which is actually the final entry, we are going to start with the setup of automations. And automations are going to help us to have Steve do its job on itself and to monitor the marketing channels of Open Assistant, adjust the content strategy where needed, ask for input if needed, and to actually do its job full on. As a quick recap, I want to give you an update of the different agents that I've set up in the meanwhile. So last time we discussed the fact that Steve is actually able to connect to Notion. Notion is mainly used as the backlog system. Descript is used to record these videos and to make sure that we have actual tutorials and the diary entries and all that. We have a blog master agent, which is able to write blogs, update blogs, whatever. We have a research agent, which is getting external information in, and the two new agents that have been added to make it more contextualized is the OpenSEO agent. That's another very interesting tool, which is very nicely integratable with Open Assistant. So Open Assistant and OpenSEO will become very good friends in the near future. And then we have PostBridge agent, which is the agent that is able to schedule social media posts on X and LinkedIn for now on Open Assistant, with the blog entries that are there. And what I want to show today is I've made a little plan of some flows that I want to automate. So first off, I want to be able to do traffic review. So review the traffic on all subdomains. So that's the searches, the amount of clicks and all that, and see what keywords have traction. So not randomly check keywords, but have it in line with the strategy of Open Assistant. So Open Assistant is there for the open source community, but can also help companies to basically streamline their internal AI flows. So monitor that content online and come up with opportunities of content that are in line with the strategy. That's the first automation. I would want to run that monthly, and it's mainly going to be based on the input coming from Open. Then the second flow, which is going to run in parallel, is blog creation. So I want to have one blog that is created on a weekly basis based on the traffic review flow that is running. So it needs to track relevant keywords and then just send one blog to review on a weekly basis to me on Slack. So it reduces the flow. I'm sure that the content is relevant within the search behavior of Open Assistant. It's aligned with the strategy, and it takes away a lot of work from my end to create a first draft. So I will get a first draft to review, and I will be way faster to tweak the content. And then once a blog has been reviewed and published, I want the third parallel flow. They all run in parallel, but the most important thing is the social post creation. So when a blog has been published in the past week, start scheduling one or two posts over the different channels to actually bring out the content that has been created. The main idea is that we bring out content that is relevant, interesting to a broader community that is working on the topic of Open Assistants or large language models, making sure that the posts are in that. Also there, I want to have a review process that it creates actual posts, but it will not go out before I review any of it. Today, I want to cover the blog draft creation. I'm going to show in a bit why I start there. I already set up Open SEO. I already checked what keywords are relevant and what not. I am not yet an SEO expert, but I'm learning a lot. And I have some draft posts that are already in the backlog. So I'll show you how the backlog is set up and how I want to set up this first flow. So let's go to the content backlog. In diary entry 3, you have seen that Notion is actually the memory or the working area for Open Assistant. So let's go there. You can see I made a content backlog, which is basically our backlog structure with the prefix of to write, and that's about it. What I want to do is this can continuously be filled. What is important as well is Open Assistant is not going to be able to write 20, 50, 100 blogs at the same time. Just like any tool, LLMs have a limited context size, so we need to make sure that if the flow runs, it picks up one of these entries, it handles it, puts it in progress, and then can be put on done when I have reviewed it. So yeah, it should be an interaction between Open Assistant and myself. So let's get started. How do we actually create a flow? Let's go to Open Assistant itself. So let's start a new conversation. All right, quite a prompt. I'll walk you through in a bit. So I've set up a content backlog on Notion. There's a bunch of articles in to do with the to write prefix. I want to create a scheduled job that runs every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. So that's 2 times a week, not once. We'll see how that goes. The flow should check what is on to do in the to write content backlog. Pick one entry, only one. So I don't want to flood the context. Search for external sources on the web and then draft a blog post on the topic. You can't make up anything, only base yourself on the content, citate your sources, and make sure to use relevant keywords from the backlog briefing. When the draft is ready, send a message on Slack to me to tell me you wrote a new blog and that it's ready for me to review. Okay, so it's fired up. Let's see what Steve is doing. So it's listing my Notion databases. Then it decided to list the databases that are there. It's querying my backlog for to write. Perfect. It picked one page. Let's see how that goes. And we'll just wait for a bit for it to actually write something. It does the web search as it indicated. However, it's running this flow, but it's not yet creating the job. That's typically what Open Assistant does, is that it first tries to execute a sequence of steps before it creates a scheduled job. That's useful to make sure that all the tool calls that are being put in a scheduled job do actually work. Okay, it seems to be done with the research, which is interesting because Steve looked up Open Assistant itself. Always good. It will check the sources. And then it's composing a document. All right. That's what I would expect. So far, so good. The good thing with automations is that now I'm basically staring at a screen, looking at what steps Steve is taking. But eventually this is just going to run in the back and I'm going to have the Slack notification at the end of all this. So this is how it will speed up my process. Nice. It created it in my name and not in its own name. All right. And it updated the Notion page, which is our backlog. Let's have a look. Perfect. It has put it in progress and a URL to the draft post. Awesome. Steve now knows what it has done. So it will create a cron job as I actually requested to do. As you can see, it will run at 6 a.m. every second and fourth day of the week. Let's have a look. So what it did, it found 19 to write entries. Awesome. It extracted one. Primary keywords were in there. Researched it. Composed a blog post. Created the blog draft. So I will show that in a bit. Updated the Notion page. And it will handle the Slack notification. So let's see whether the cron job has actually been created and whether the post is there. So we go to monitoring, jobs, content backlog, craft. Wow. Okay, it just worked. Let's have a look. The steps are in here. I can actually see the recipe for it. But I want to do edit recipe. It says it should be written in the name of Ollie, but I will change that to Steve. Save recipe. Awesome. And then the next thing I need to check is making sure that the draft is there. Let's have a look. Self-hosted AI agent, a complete guide for 2026. Let's have a look, preview. Well, that's some stuff for me to review. But as you can see, if you go to jobs, we now have a new job that is running. And to come back to the overall plan, I can do with this, I will still set up the flow for the traffic review on a monthly basis because 19 entries is quite a bit. So if we would have a monthly traffic review with 2 blog drafts a week, that would be with 4 weeks a month, 8 entries that will be written every month. But either way, what have we seen? It's quite easy to set up automations. You just prompt whatever you want and Open Assistant will figure out by itself what tools and integrations it can use. When it all works, it creates the job, and eventually you can just do whatever you want to do, and you will be notified when you need to give any input to your Open Assistant. This was the last entry of Open Assistant, since we have discussed how we will keep memory, how we set up custom plugins, how you can set up your agents. Now you know how to set up automations, and in a bit you will see that the block of Open Assistant will have quite some interesting entries that you can read and see to learn more about Open Assistant. See you later.